Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you very much to all of you that you take such an interest in coming together from various parts of Europe and comparing notes about how you feel about the future. And the theme is about the future of democracy, and that is the foundation of how we want to build our nations, our countries, how we model our countries. But the theme we built today, in fact, it's very encouraging to see more people in the room than one would often see during the Parliamentary Assembly sessions. Then the theme is about multilateralism, isn't it? And it is about women who are stakeholders in multilateralism and in the security agenda. You know, I think there are a few dates that we would want to remind ourselves, anniversaries that would be helpful in terms of testing whether history teaches us anything. The United Nations was celebrating its 70th anniversary in 2015. A few weeks ago, Europe was commemorating the Armistice Day. Soon we will be commemorating the end of the Second World War, the 75th anniversary. This year we're celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And most importantly, in the context of where we are, next year this organization will be celebrating its 70th anniversary. And I think all of those anniversaries are reminders about the powers of multilateralism, the powers of nations coming together to address collective challenges and collective threats. And I think the 100th anniversary of the First World War and the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War are exactly the dates when we think about the alternative to multilateralism. And the alternative has been the catastrophe, and this continent has known it too well. The extent and the depth of catastrophe. However, those anniversaries are also taking place at a time when there is decline in so many ways. Decline of multilateralism, decline of democracy, decline for respect for human rights. We're witnesses in various parts of the world, and Europe is not an exception, witnesses of the rise of populism, of the rise of nationalism. And again, the question before us is whether history teaches us anything. I think when we talk about these things, it's the security issue, the concept of security that is at the heart of the deliberation. The security in its entirety. Security in terms of the defense security and the security for the development of our nations. And at the heart of it is the human person, in my view. And the United Nations Charter has been written on behalf of we the peoples. And it reaffirms the faith in human rights and in the dignity and worth of the human person. I think that's the foundation of the entire architecture that we built. For the security arrangement globally. So the human person as the center of our deliberation. The multilateralism is the capacity, the test of our willingness, our wish to collectively approach crisis, collectively approach all those issues that are before our societies, before our nations. There are good examples, after all. We shouldn't undermine everything. I don't want to appear someone who brings everything in the bleak colors. There are good examples. There was a reference to Agenda 2030. And that is an example, the latest example of how the international community has been capable to come together and address the global issues of development and the way in which we work together. There are other examples, the climate change. Again, a capacity, because none of the nations is capable to address those issues alone. We're not capable to deal with most of the issues in the globalized world alone. So we do delegate part of our sovereignty to this collective effort for our own benefit as sovereign states, as nations, for the benefit of our people. So that's the value of multilateralism. And we are in a continent which is perhaps one of the most elaborate in the architecture of multilateralism. In Europe, you have the variety of regional and sub-regional organizations that bring nations together to work together is unprecedented. Here, in this organization, we have something that is not known anywhere else in the world, the Court of Fourth Instance, the European Court. This is an organization which has been created 70 years ago, nearly 70 years ago, created to put democracy, human rights, and the rule of law as the foundation of multilateralism within this regional setting. We are a new member to the Council of Europe. We are one of the beneficiaries of that multilateralism because we have chosen a model, once we restored our independence, we have chosen a model which absorbs the values of Europe, which absorbs the principles of Europe, absorbs the architecture, national building, state institutional building along the lines that are known to Europe. Our road has been bumpy. We have known many instances of crisis nationally in building these institutions and moving forward. But it was through this multilateralism, through this collective work within this organization to elevate our national capacity to a point that made the Velvet Revolution in April, May this year possible. It didn't happen out of nothing. It happened because in its entirety, the state institutions, the civil society, the media, all components of our collective life in the country have come to a point where it was possible to absorb shock and to take protest in a direction that brings our country to a much firmer ground. The Council of Europe has been very critical in that, because it was through the Council of Europe, with the Council of Europe, with the generation of this collective effort to bring the expertise, the knowledge to our country, and to instill what we call the values of Europe in our country. So that's an example. That's a positivism of multilateralism. In our country, we have this saying. We say that democracy in the case of Armenia is not a mere choice of a political model, it's a security issue. And I personally believe in that. I think, again, this continent has shown the power of democracy and respect for human rights as a foundation for reliable security. There are many ways of looking at it, but I want to, go straight to the target. Women and youth as stakeholders in building security, stakeholders in building national institutions, in participating in national life, participating in the arrangements within which the society finds harmony. I will bring you an example. The Prime Minister of Armenia, when he was marching, when he was in protest, and he was addressing the crowds, the people in the streets, in the squares of Armenia, at some point he thought to himself, he said, when I saw this many women, this many young women, this many women with pushchairs and their children, I thought, this is going to happen. That was a very important message. We live in a region where we're not free of conflict. We deal with the unresolved conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. Women have that power of delivering the alternative message to militarism, to hatred. And we recognize that. There is this initiative in Armenia that we want to mobilize the women on all sides so that they carry the message of peace. There is this belief that women have this capacity to be socially more responsible. And their sensitivity to peace is far stronger. But we haven't learned the way in which we use this capacity. And I think that's a collective challenge. There is the United Nations Resolution 1325. I think it's a very important document, which is a very good foundation for all of us to work together, to collectively bring it to our national level and see how we can make use of that multilateral document to our national purpose. We in Armenia, again, well, it took some time for us to get to that point, but I'm really glad that we will be working within a national setting on the implementation of Resolution 1325. Mr. President, you mentioned item Goal 5 of the SDGs. We have the various settings, but the question before us, the various settings within the SDG, we have our collective will, collective commitment to this. We have the various institutions within the United Nations, within this organization, within other settings, to promote the women agenda at the global level, at the international level. But this is an ongoing challenge because in every nation there are countries with more visible progress, countries with different record. But I think it's an ongoing challenge in that we haven't come to a level where we can claim there is a level of participation of women in our life, in our public life, nationally, globally, that would bring us satisfaction and say we have come to that point. It's an ongoing challenge. In my country, again, we have constitutionally made a setting, a ceiling of 25% participation of women in parliament. We still have to come to that target, and that is not good. We still have to raise the level of women in, women's participation in political life. And I think we are not an exception. So this is a very timely discussion. This is an opportunity. Most of you are young people. Most of you are the ones who will be in charge of the future of democracy. And this is an ongoing challenge for all of us. And I do appeal to collectively be sensitive and resolute about this agenda. Because women participation, I claim, in public life, nationally and globally, is an issue of security. Security, nationally and globally. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre, pour avoir partagé avec nous votre vision et votre expérience nationale, notamment sur le rôle des femmes dans la transformation politique que connaît actuellement votre pays.